Children spend much of their time online, using it to learn, connect, and share. These spaces present risks as children are still developing and have limited influence.
One principle is clear. Children's rights do not end where the digital world begins. Today, the internet is a classroom, a playground, and a public space. If rights to privacy, protection, participation, and development are not safeguarded, online, children are left vulnerable to exploitation and harm.
Respecting rights online is not optional. It is essential for the inclusion of children in modern society.
We should be able to express our thoughts, communicate with friends, and play freely. For these activities to be possible, it is essential that our rights are respected online.
Proteger a la niñez en línea no es opcional, es una obligación legal y es esencial para su bienestar.
We have seen progress towards corporate accountability, including stronger expectations for child rights due diligence and safety by design. Standards are clearer. The priority now is consistent enforcement to ensure real protection for children.
Meaningful change is also taking place at the national level throughout the world, notably with the UK's Age-Appropriate Design Code, Indonesia's RPP Tunas, or Brazil's ICA Digital. These international best practices, alongside General Comment 25, provide actionable guidance to legislators, policymakers, and regulators around the world.
Digital world is created by adults. Internet spaces are not designed with children's safety in mind, which places them under known and unknown potential threats.
Companies often apply weaker regulatory framework or online safety standard in different countries, considering especially the global south. So offline inequalities can be maintained or even increased in online world.
In Southeast Asia, algorithm-driven harm remains underaddressed. It is not only harmful content, but systems that amplify it.
The main concern is that we try to fix these problems after they happen instead of preventing them.
General Comment 25 provides a clear roadmap to help us all uphold children's rights through and in the digital environment.
If I could say one thing to the people who create apps or websites, I would tell them, please make children's safety and freedom your top priority.
La responsabilidad de cada sector no puede depender solo de compromisos voluntarios. Debe estar respaldada por marcos regulatorios sólidos y la cooperación internacional.
We need mandatory child rights impact assessments, strong data protection, and prohibition of harmful practices. Platforms must ensure safety and privacy by default. Accountability requires enforcement and meaningful remedies for every child.
Children should be given a chance to participate in policy making so that we can create policies that best suit us and protect our rights.
When children consistently ask for accountability that goes beyond promises, it is our duty to listen. They want clear privacy protections, better age-appropriate design, and reporting systems that actually lead to action. They emphasize the need for real human oversight, not just automated responses.
Accountability begins by recognizing children not as consumers, but as right holders.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this session on the GC25. I am Pendon from 5 Rights from Kenya, and I will be one of the moderators today.
And I am Hector from Greece, also a 5 Rights Youth Ambassador. We are really excited to host today's event celebrating the General Comment number 25. This event is being recorded and will be posted online. Please feel free to turn off your camera if you don't want to be seen in the video.
All right, so to start it off, our first speaker will be Baron Iban Kidron, founder and president of 5 Rights Youth Program. a member of the UK House of Lords. So please feel free and welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you both very much. And I apologize to everybody who's joined. There were some issues with the sound, but love the emojis. So I really want to start by just thanking you for spending the time with us. So many friends and colleagues I can see coming up in the chat and on the screen. And there is a very packed schedule. So I wanted to start just with a couple of reflections. First, when I started on this journey myself, I kept finding myself in rooms and meetings in which the idea of children's digital rights was being discussed. This was around 2012, 2013. And while the scale of disruption to childhood was not yet clear to the general public, I and others, many of whom are on this call, already knew that as a generational injustice was taking place. And that was partly because we already had articulated the conditions of a safe and secure childhood. They were codified in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. But at that time, the digital world was considered other, and those rights that apply to children in all other environments were being routinely ignored by a sector who had already adopted a position outside the normal laws of nation states and international obligations. And I remember thinking back at that time as sort of a disbelief, that feeling a disbelief that the tech sector was serving millions of children as if they were adult and demanding of them that they have the wisdom and self-regulation far beyond their development, age, and stage. So the decision to undertake General Comment 25 was a bold one, because even before a sentence had been drafted, the committee had sent a powerful message that children's rights were indeed applicable to the digital world, just like any other. The process itself was a pleasure, and I pay tribute not only to Sonia Livingston, who you'll hear from, but Jutta Kroll, Jerison Lansdowne, and Amanda Third for their tireless work, but also to hundreds of academics and experts and many countries that engaged with the process, and of course the 1,000 children who gave us the benefit of their advice and wisdom. Despite the time past and the more general understanding that the digital world must protect children's rights to safety, participation, and life, I believe that the general comment still stands as the most comprehensive overview of what good looks like. I've spent much of my own last 5 years trying to implement many of its provisions, some with great success, others with less, but nonetheless, it is a roadmap, a guide, and a beacon of whatever state, multilateral group, every community and adult should expect to do on behalf of children the world over. And I want to also take the opportunity to pay tribute to the committee for their recent joint statement on AI and the rights of the child. I would like to see, over time, a general comment on AI, but I commend the committee for acting swiftly and purposefully, because if we are to build the digital world that children deserve, we must build their rights and our responsibilities into products and services from the start. Finally, let me do a huge shout out to all 5 Rights Youth Ambassadors, the ones you see on your screen, and literally hundreds who I've spoken to over the years. You guys are our guides and our inspiration. I really want to thank everyone for giving up their time, and I want to wish General Comment 25 a very happy 5th birthday.
Thank you so much for that, Kidron. I agree completely that we should look up to General Comment 25, and we should hold it up to the greenness that it is. And hopefully we are able to see a general comment on AI, as you said, in the future.
I also want to thank Mrs. Bibron for this unique speech. And next, we are going to hear from Professor Sophie Kladze, who is the chair of the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. Mrs. Sophie, over to you.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, friends, and most importantly, dear children and youth. It's a true honor and privilege to speak with you today on the occasion of the 5th anniversary of General Comment number 25. I cannot thank enough the Five Rights Foundation for their tireless dedication and effort in organizing this important celebration. At a time when child rights face backlash in many areas, campaigns like this are vital. They remind all of us who bears responsibility to protect children, particularly in the digital environment. But before moving on to the GC25 specifically, I would like first to express my deepest concerns about the developments in the Middle East and wider region, which already resulted in deaths or injuries of children. And I call upon all relevant actors to cease fire immediately and to end killing and suffering of children, and to undertake all necessary measures to protect all rights of all children. Now to come back to the General Comment number 25. Since its adoption, the General Comment 25 has become an integral part of the work of the Committee on the Rights of the Child. In every country review, we include recommendations that are tailored to their circumstances of children, addressing their unique needs in this concrete specific country. These concluding observations inspired laws, policies, programs, and business obligations to protect children from harm online. Based on it, progress is seen for millions of children, protecting them from harmful content, discrimination, violence, including sexual abuse, economic exploitation, mental health, and ensuring digital literacy. Beyond governments, GC25 has been a tool for international organizations, civil society, and children themselves to advocate for rights around the world. Many CNSOs, of course, including the Five Rights Foundation as one of the leading organizations in the field, have worked tirelessly to bring the principles of GC25 to life, and many of them were really very much successful, bringing tangible results for children. 5 years ago, GC25 mentioned AI only briefly. At that time, AI was not the pressing issue as it is today. But the digital landscape evolves quickly and we must evolve with it. That is why in January we launched the joint statement on AI and the rights of the child. This is the first soft law instrument jointly developed by international organizations to address AI and children's rights. It builds on GC25 while responding to rapid technological change in the AI field. This joint statement reflects a truly multi-stakeholder process with inputs from international organizations, business, academia, civil society, and children themselves from every region of the world. The process was called by ITU, the CRC, and UNICEF, and co-signed by 14 international organizations and co-branded by over 60 others. And I see many of you who joined this joint statement as co-brand or co-signatory. Despite these positive developments, challenges are heartbreaking. Children's rights in the digital environment continue to be under threat, particularly from emerging technologies such as AI. Millions of children face risks every day, and the rapid pace of technological change means that our work is never finished. Hundreds of millions of children face mental health problems, Their privacy is being violated and personal data exploited. Digital inequalities are rapidly rising. A number of different sort of crimes are skyrocketing, including millions of child sexual abuse videos available in darknets, involving children in gangs and drug-related activities, radicalization of children. The list is really very, very long. Yet, even in this phase of these challenges, we can take hope. GC25 has already brought concrete, tangible results for children in every region of the world. It is a shining example of how authoritative guidance from the Committee on the Rights of the Child and the huge efforts of many behind it can translate into real-world impact. It reminds us this progress is possible when governments, organizations, and communities come together for children. So today, let us celebrate achievements of the GC25 worldwide and at the same time recommit ourselves to protecting child rights in digital environment. Let us call upon states, business, international organizations, NGOs, and academia to do much more and with more quality to achieve the protection in digital environment children deserve. I thank all of you once again for your immense efforts. First of all, once again, Five Rights Foundation, all the adults, and of course, all the children and yours, and wishing happy birthday once again to GC25. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sophie, for those insights. I want to start by saying that I also feel kind of anxiety for all those stuff that is happening in the Middle East. It's not good at all. Lives getting thrown in the rubbish bin like they don't exist or they don't deserve anything. But we are here in order to say that it's our responsibility, all of us, we ought to protect the rights of youth in the digital world by making our beliefs and the beliefs of the GC25 come true and actually make a change.
Okay, great. So now we have Annika from the United States and Savera from New Zealand, who will be joining us through a video, who are both Five Rights Youth Ambassadors. And they will speak about the reality of children's digital experience. All right, welcome. We're glad you can join us.
Thank you so much.
Annika, if you can.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Annika Raj. I'm a Five Rights Youth Ambassador, and I'm also chair of the NCADA, the National Coalition Against Deepfake Abuse. First off, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited that I can amplify my voice. Today, I wanted to focus on Article 19, which is in the Convention of the Rights of Child. It essentially guarantees that every single child to the right to protection from violence, abuse, and exploitation. Now, specifically, I wanted to focus on a technology that is filled in all of our, I would say, Instagram reels. They're called deepfakes. They're essentially AI-generated images or videos that can make people do things or actions that they've never done. For young people, I think this translates to this idea of sexual images and humiliating content. Unfortunately, I think one of my classmates, a high school New Jersey student, was sexually deepfaked. That video was literally circulated through the school in a humiliating process. And at that time, there was absolutely no laws or policies implemented into the United States. After that, that student was able to create deepfakes accountability law and other laws about deepfakes. What I'd like to say is that this idea of a general comment, our voices are amplifying what's wrong about the digital world. There's one thing missing. There's one thing that has to be solved. It's this concrete solution. I think with technology, we can create policy. We can create a basis of rights and what people should do and what people should not do. But I think it falls more into solutions. I would say for deepfakes, one thing the NCADA is working on is essentially creating a digital hashbank. When people upload deepfakes into their videos or onto Reels, there should be a watermark that is able to essentially differ between fake media and real media. By using these voices of the UN and government, by investing money and, I guess, resources to create this technology is going to be a smarter way to combat this. For any child, going on social media can either feel alleviating or it can feel like a burden of stress. And by utilizing these resources that are at our plate, like this Zoom meeting, we have to be creating solutions. We need to be combining different organizations. And so that's kind of just what I wanted to touch upon. I know that we have a video for the next youth ambassador, so thank you.
5 years ago, General Comment number 25 made it clear that children's rights apply fully in the digital environment. That recognition was important because the internet was no longer just a tool we used occasionally. It had already become part of how children learn, communicate, and grow. 5 years later, that reality has only deepened. Today, over 70% of young people globally are online. When an environment becomes central to development, its design begins to shape development itself. I am 17, and stemming from my experiences as a young person and from working directly with students through my well-being initiative, Bright Start, I have seen how strongly digital systems influence confidence and self-perception. General Comment number 25 shifted the framework by recognizing children as rights holders in digital spaces. That shift means governments and companies have a responsibility not only to react to harm, but to consider children's development at the design stage. In the next 5 years, I hope we see child rights impact assessments become standard before new technologies scale globally, especially AI systems that shape what children see, learn, and believe. I also hope youth participation in digital governance becomes structured and consistent, not occasional. Young people do not want to be removed from digital spaces. We want environments that recognize our developmental realities and respect our agency. The measure of digital progress should not be how connected children are, but whether the systems shaping childhood support our growth. General Comment number 25 created the foundation. The responsibility now is to ensure that digital innovation strengthens childhood rather than quietly straining it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annika and Savera. Your speeches were very accurate and helpful, I think, for everyone. And we were really appreciated to hear you.
Yes, thank you so much, both of you. And Annika, I hope NCATA can go so far. Next up, we'll have Gina Berg, a human rights officer at the Office of the UN High Commission of Human Rights. Gina, over to you.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thanks, Upendo, for the question. So as we have just heard, children and young people have things to say about their digital world that are important and nuanced, but too often nobody asks. So we did. Our Digital World, Our Say, is a global participatory research project led by UN Human Rights with Digital Futures for Children and Five Rights Foundation. With the help of over 20 committed partners, we reached more than 530 children across 26 countries, including children in rural, marginalized communities whose voices usually never make it anywhere near policy circles. A survey was also shared as input by Save the Children South Korea and provided insights from over 400 children on their interactions with AI. So 5 years after GC 25 was drafted, we wanted to know, how far are we from the vision of children's rights being respected in the digital world? Do they even know about these rights that they have? And what do they think needs to change to make it better? Children spoke about what they value: access to information, the empowerment and comfort of connecting with friends, communities, and their interests online. But they also talked quite a lot, and with striking clarity, about what's going wrong. And on this point, 4 things really stood out for us. Firstly, children's digital lives have transformed beyond what any of us anticipated 5 years ago. And AI is where this is most visible. Children said they're turning to AI chatbots for emotional support, health advice, help navigating conflict with parents and friends, because as one 15-year-old put it, they don't want to make their friends an emotional dumpster, or simply because there are things they just feel they can't share with the people around them. But these systems have not been designed with children's rights, safety, and best interests as a priority. In SAVE's South Korean survey, when chatbots suggested risky weight loss methods, more than half the children were interested in trying them. And equally concerning, AI is quietly stepping into the family and friendship functions that have shaped our children's lives since humanity's beginnings. So what will be the outcomes for the next generations who turn to AI for emotional support they feel they can't get as easily elsewhere? This is a social experiment happening live and at a scale none of us ever imagined possible, let alone desirable. Our second finding is that the systems designed to protect children online are deeply lacking or failing, and not at the margins, but systematically. Children described addictive design leading to excessive time on screens and devices, affecting their physical, mental health, manipulative algorithms leading to content they don't want or feel comfortable about, but they can't opt out of either, and safety measures that are hopelessly easy to get around. And across very different contexts and age groups, children said they didn't seek help, even when something goes wrong online. And that's not because they don't know help is available, but because they don't expect a real or effective response. Children also fear being blamed or having devices confiscated. This finding confirms a recognized phenomenon that challenges online safety frameworks dependent on reporting. The third thing that stood out is that policies are being designed without involving the children and young people that they affect, based on assumptions that they say are wrong. Across our consultations, children said adults often misunderstand their digital lives. For example, seeing danger and distraction where they're experiencing learning, creativity, and connection. And from this misunderstanding, policy responses can flow that don't work for children. For example, age-based bans on social media may seem like an easy solution, but in practice, many children say they don't want them or that they won't solve the problem. As one reflected, saying young people should come off social media puts the responsibility of online safety on the shoulders of young people, when really the burden lies with tech companies and governments to make these spaces suitable and safe. Fourth and finally, when we actually ask children, they prove why governments and tech companies should do much more to fulfill their right to be heard. Children's analysis throughout the research was sophisticated, precise, and often ahead of our own. And yet across countries, facilitators reported that this was the first time the children they were speaking to had ever been informed or asked about their rights in the digital world. 5 years on from GC25, that is an indictment. In Timor-Leste, where most participants share a family device and internet access is patchy, children told us, "We know many things about online life. Ask us first." In our next steps as UN Human Rights on this agenda, we are prioritizing a Human Rights Council resolution that requested consultations across regions to identify the main challenges and options for a global framework on child safety in the digital environment. Children's voices from this report will feed directly into that process. And to close, I just want to emphasize that I'm speaking to you today not only as a UN representative, but also as a parent of 3 wonderful young children. And in both capacities, I can say with confidence that children cannot be reduced to a user base or exploited for ad clicks and profit. But the business models that are shaping their digital world treat engagement as the metric and children as a market. Colleagues, this is taking us in the wrong direction. It's also why 5 years on, the distance between the vision set out in GC25 and the reality children are describing is not narrowing, it is growing. We urgently need a reset in how digital products are designed, in how tech companies take all of this on board and become accountable, and in how we listen to children who depend on us adults getting this right. Thanks to GC25, the roadmap already exists. Now it's time to follow it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your perspective, Gina, especially on the social aspects that need to be addressed when looking at children's lives in the digital space. And I'm so sure that with the General Comment 25, we're going to be able to move forward and address every one of those issues in the future.
Up is Dr. Kim Sylvander, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the Digital Future for Children Center. Kim, the floor is yours.
Thank you. May I ask if you can see my slides? The classic digital question, right? Hi, everyone, and thank you to all of the youth ambassadors who have joined us today for sharing your insights, and to the speakers before me who have so brilliantly highlighted the role that General Comment 25 has in the world, which is really to affirm something very simple and transformative, that children's rights apply fully in the digital environment. And at the Digital Futures for Children Center, we have developed a project where we set out to map what has happened since 2021. And the overarching objective was to understand how an interpretive human rights instrument travels across UN processes, regional organizations, and national systems, and whether it is shaping law, policy, advocacy, and governments. So in other words, how does a general comment become real change? And where do we see this change? Let me see here. There we go. So what did we do? We combined a document analysis across UN resolutions, Human Rights Council outputs, regional frameworks, and national legislation with an analysis of 79 UNCRC state party reviews, which was also complemented by expert consultations, of which I know many who are in this room have taken part, and we're forever grateful for that. We conducted case studies, and we developed a theory of change framework to trace legal, institutional, advocacy, and normative pathways of influence. So 5 years after its adoption, General Comment number 25 has clearly moved beyond interpretation and an authoritative normative framework and into implementation in national contexts. Brazil provides a very strong example where the General Comment has been explicitly referenced in law, and the General Comment has been embedded in safety by design, privacy by design, restrictions on profiling, and targeted advertising and mandatory child rights impact assessments have been put into law. In Ireland, the General Comment has been translated into regulatory practice through data protection, through the Data Protection Commission's child-oriented data framework and the online safety code, and civil society mobilization around the General Comment, which has been huge across Ireland, and also engaging civil society organizations in other countries, not in the least Five Rights Foundation. This mobilization has shaped obligations on age assurance, remedies, and corporate accountability. So Brazil and Ireland, and João will talk on Brazil later, but are really examples of how the consolidation of civil society, non-governmental organizations, even UN agencies, really brings forth kind of the importance of the General Comment on a national basis. The Netherlands also has operationalized child rights impact assessments and adopted a code of children's rights online, grounded in the General Comment's principles, and the Indonesian law that was just passed and entered into force, or it will enter into force, mirrors the General Comment standards on data protection, participation, and accountability, shaped really through an international cross-sector advocacy of which, again, many of the actors who were part of that process and informing the way forward in the Indonesian context are in this room today. The Australian e-safety commissioner has also explicitly referenced and relies on the general comment when guiding age assurance, privacy, safeguarding, and participation mechanisms. So across context, what we see is really there is clear impact in safety by design, in corporate due diligence, risk assessments, age-appropriate design, and emerging AI governance measures. So we really have these coming out most visibly, these safety by design, privacy by design standards, corporate due diligence obligations, as we saw in the videos as well in the beginning, risk assessment frameworks, AI governance and accountability measures are really very high up on the agenda at the moment on a national level, where we can see in these debates on a national level that the General Comment 25 is really being integrated. And for many advocates and civil society organizations that we've spoken to, it's really leading how they address these issues. So here we also see the very importance of General Comment 25 in the everyday practice of all of us working kind of to make sure that children's rights are not forgotten when designing digital governments. But what about the regional uptake? So at the regional level, we do see consolidation rather than isolated references. So in the European Union, for example, we do have Article 28 of the Digital Services Act guidelines, which reflects core elements of the general comment, particularly the best interests principles, evolving capacities, and systemic risk mitigation for children. In the African Union, we see the general comment reflected in the 2024 Child Online Safety and Empowerment Policy, explicitly referencing the general comment and structures its framework around its principles. We have the AU model law, which goes further, translating those principles into legislative templates for member states. So here we see kind of a framework that might be then implemented across the African Union. In the Council of Europe, we see that the general comment has been integrated into AI governance discussions and child rights impact assessment initiatives. And ASEAN, we see that guidelines are being harmonized towards national legislation, which also referencing it in strengthening child online protection. So importantly, influence is not only visible through formal citation, it operates through alignment of language, regulatory logic, institutional practice, and shared principles, demonstrating normative consolidation across regions. And we've looked at the uptake of the general comment in the UN more broadly. So within the UN system, the general comment has moved from treaty body guidance to a system-wide reference point. The 2023 UN General Assembly resolution on the rights of the child in the digital environment marked a very significant political endorsement of the general comment and its framework. The Human Rights Council's 2023 annual day centered explicitly on implementation, and special rapporteurs increasingly draw on the general comment in digital governance reporting, both to countries, but also annual reports, thematic reports. Most notably, the Committee on the Rights of the Child has progressively embedded it in its monitoring practices. And by 2025, every state review substantively addressed children's rights in the digital environment. Equally, UNICEF has been a leading institutional agent of change, operationalizing the general comment across data governance, AI, education, technology, and online safety programming across the world. Finally, the 2026 Joint Statement on Artificial Intelligence, which Sophie so eloquently spoke about earlier, really reflects a cross-agency consolidation around its standards in emerging technology governance. And together, these developments show institutional normalization within the UN system. So what enables uptake? Across regions, uptake is strongest where governance systems are consolidated and well-resourced, particularly where independent regulators exist and human rights frameworks are embedded in law. Active civil society mobilization and practical tools like child rights impact assessments, cross-border policy learning, and institutional independence from industry influence are critical enablers. Where these conditions are present, the general comment functions as an agenda-setting framework. However, persistent obstacles also remain. Some states resist recognizing treaty body interpretations. Protectionist framings narrow children's rights to safety online. Enforcement capacity is often weak and governance fragmented, and reliance on voluntary industry standards is common. In several countries or in several contexts, the general comment is accepted rhetorically, but resisted when it implies enforceable corporate duties or addresses contested issues such as parental authority and evolving capacities. So, 5 years after its adoption, General Comment number 25 has achieved normative consolidation and measurable regulatory influence. It is shaping legislation, informing regional frameworks, and guiding UN processes. But recognition is not realization. The next phase depends on enforcement, regulatory capacity, and sustained advocacy, particularly to ensure corporate accountability. It also requires embedding children's participation in digital governance decisions, just as Gina really highlighted in her talk. The challenge now is ensuring that children's rights are not only affirmed in resolutions and statutes, but realized in practice across the digital environments that shape their lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all those good reflections, Mrs. Kim. And I want to say that your presentation was very helpful in order to see how Five Rights and the GC25 actually works and all the positive changes that we have made. Thank you very much.
All right, let's hear from Marie Nadio, the head of international affairs at Five Rights Foundation. Marie, please go ahead.
Thank you, Pendo. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great.
Can hear
Good
you.
morning and good afternoon and good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world. It's great to see so many friends and partners from around the world. And first, I have to start by thanking Sami for all the work that he's done on our report, on this event, and on the comms campaign that you've seen a glimpse, although couldn't hear it all, but it will be on social media soon. And also to thank our comms team and the Digital Future for Children, who've done a lot of work in the background to make today's celebration possible. So we've heard already that since General Comment 25 was adopted 5 years ago, technology is only increasingly permeating almost every aspect of children's lives, from how they learn to how they build friendship and how they understand the world around themselves. And what we are seeing is that governments are struggling to catch up. And at the same time, tech companies still continue to claim this exceptionalism and act as if they are beyond accountability. So we continue to see a result that technology continue to be designed without children in mind, where safety is treated as an afterthought, where it's reactive, retrofitted, it's diluted behind closed door. And this has profound consequences because it impacts children's lives in ways that they often cannot understand, they cannot contest or escape. And it violates their rights, their autonomy, their safety, and their privacy. As Biben mentioned at the beginning, for the past 5 years, we've had General Comment 25 as our North Star and making clear that the digital environment is no exception. And as Kim has demonstrated, it has forged a growing international consensus across legal systems and across continents. And progress has been hard-won and achieved despite relentless pushback from companies. So building on this foundation, and after a decade or more of work of Five Rights around the world in this space, we're really happy today to launch Building a Digital Environment Designed with Children in Mind, a blueprint that has looked at more than 50 different pieces of policies, legislation, and guidance from across continents, a list that was already previously mentioned by Kim. And as General Comment 25 is clear that children's rights are not limited to social media or chatbots, this guidance also breaks the silos across online safety, across data protection and AI, to identify the foundational principles and actionable guidance. So I'll be walking you through some of the key sections of the blueprint. So first, to understand what risks children are exposed in the digital environment, they have been recognized internationally for the past decade under the 5 C's framework, which covers harmful content, contacts, and conduct, commercial exploitation, as well as cross-cutting risks that intersect along these categories. And these risks are not limited to one platforms or services. Children encounter them from the social media to their favorite games, in AI tools or edtech products they use in the classroom. And as Gina mentioned, the prevalence of these risks is amplified by the commercial logic behind them. Companies exploit children's emotional vulnerabilities, their fear of missing out, the pressure to be always online and collected. Through extractive data practices, manipulative and addictive design, companies' choices actively amplify harms at the cost of children's sleep, learning, mental health, safety, and well-being. And yet the response promoted by tech companies such as parental controls, user empowerment tools, digital literacy, and content moderation do not address these root cause of harms. And instead, they shift the responsibilities onto children and their families while leaving this risky design completely untouched. So this blueprint explores in greater depth those limitations of such band-aid approach. But now the central piece of the report is the fundamental principles for the systemic protection of children in the digital world, or 10 actionable recommendations that address these underlying systemic risks and ensure that children's rights and safety are embedded upstream by design and default. Because General Comment 25 is clear, tech companies have the responsibility to respect children's rights and prevent violations. So now I'll dive into 5 of those principles. So first, yes, we often see different age thresholds to cater for children's development and evolving capacities. But children are rights holders under the Convention on the Rights of the Child until they turn 18, not 13 nor 16. And these rights apply wherever children are on all products and services that are likely to be accessed. So they must be safe and privacy preserving and respect their rights by design and default. Second, children's rights impact assessment. But before in the report, you will find those practical examples where those principles are based upon, from international to national. But on children's rights impact assessment, if we wait to intervene until a child is harmed, we have failed. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have due diligence and risk assessment and mitigation that are already standards across industries, from medicines to aviation. In these industries, products cannot reach the market without demonstrating their safety first. And the same must apply to technology that impact children's lives. And children's rights impact assessment must be required as they allow tech companies to be proactive about anticipating the impact of design choices, features and functionalities, and their business model, to evaluate these against the rights and the best interests of the child and take necessary measures to prevent and mitigate harm. And as I mentioned earlier, the risks that children are facing are often amplified by tech companies' deliberate design choices. The default settings are the most extractive, the most commercially beneficial, and the least safe and privacy preserving. But since these are human choices, they can be changed. And we can make better choices that put children's rights, safety, and best interest first. And privacy and safety by design and default rectify this imbalance of power. And they provide a robust baseline of protection proactively from the start, not retrofitted after harm occurs. From no default data harvesting to limits to profiling and age-appropriate safeguards built in. But some practices are so harmful that they must be prohibited, from engagement-based recommender systems steering towards harmful and illegal content to data-driven features and persuasive design that pressure children to keep engaging. But finally, as Kim mentioned, the work is not finished once the regulation is adopted. Implementing children's rights in the digital environment requires effective enforcement. Without it, children's rights violation persists. But when tech companies are held accountable, we're seeing action. And we've seen it from the UK Age Appropriate Design Code to EU Digital Services Act. evidence that do show changes in companies' practices regarding safety, regarding privacy, when they're held accountable. They address addictive and manipulative design and curb extractive data practices. So 5 years ago, we made a promise to design a digital environment with children in mind, but the work is not finished. But we have General Comment 25 as a North Star, and now with this blueprint, we have a strong foundation to hold tech companies accountable for embedding children's rights by design by default, and to ensure that children can safely access and participate and fully benefit from the digital world. And as we saw in the opening videos, over 55 leading organizations from all continents have joined us in this celebration today, and many more online as well, and are joining us in a call to action, urging states to build on these best practices and deliver the digital world that we promise children. So thank you everyone for being here today and for your continued commitment. Over to you, Pendo.
Thank you so much for your great insight today. I'm sure everyone was able to gain more understanding about safety by design and how GC25 is a pioneer. I'll hand it off to Hector.
Next, we'll hear from João Francisco de Aguilar Coelho, who is a child rights advocate and lawyer at the Alana Institute. João, over to you.
Okay, I think this worked. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. So my name is João. I'm going to share my screen in just one moment. Okay. Can you see my slides? Okay, perfect. So my name is João. I work in Alana Institute, a civil society organization in Brazil. And like Kim and others have mentioned already, we recently passed a law in Brazil called ECA Digital, or the Digital Statute of Children and Adolescents, which is a very robust law that defines obligations for the digital sector in order to safeguard children's rights online. I'm not going to go through the entire law, but I just wanted to very briefly show you some articles that I feel illustrate the impact that General Comment number 25 had in this legislation. So Article 5 provides that every information technology product or service, whether they are aimed at children or likely to be accessed by them, must observe prevention, protection, information, and security duties, as well as the best interests of the child. I also wanted to point to Article 22, which provides on the digital advertisement targeted at children and teenagers. And this article was also directly inspired by General Comment number 25. So I think, we're celebrating General Comment number 25 today. And these are really illustrations of the impact this document has had on our legislation. So the process of approving this law in Brazil was not an easy one. As we know, big tech lobbying, especially in global South countries, can be very, very intense, and the push for deregulation is getting stronger and stronger. So I wanted to share some insights and some lessons that we learned throughout the process of approving this law, hoping that they can be useful, especially for those of us who are also joining us from other global South countries that might still be struggling against the power of big tech. So the first lesson that we learned, and that I think was very important in approving this law, was the importance of bringing the debate around children's rights in the digital environment closer to other organizations that are not necessarily focused only on the rights of children. I think, the protection of children sometimes tends to be put in a separate box, and not, all data protection or digital governance organizations are always discussing those topics. But we really made an effort in Brazil to strengthen the bridges between Alana and organizations that were working with digital rights more broadly, in order to make sure that they were also doing research and also thinking about children's rights. And by doing so, we were able to strengthen our advocacy efforts by expanding our coalition and making sure that there were more voices involved in those issues. We were able to enrich the debate with other perspectives, which I think are always very useful. And most of all, we were able to honor the spirit of the Convention of the Rights of the Child and Brazil's federal constitution, which states that the responsibility for upholding children's rights is not a responsibility that lies solely within families or specialized organizations, but rather all of society. The second lesson that I wanted to share with you all was our use of strategic litigation and pre-existing legal frameworks to build momentum and pressure for more regulation. Well before we had ECA Digital in Brazil, we were already doing complaints and interacting with public bodies in order to try and push for change in tech design and push for platform accountability under pre-existing legal frameworks, such as our consumer code or our child protection laws that were in place since the 90s. And I think this was very, very important for a variety of reasons. It was a way to increase pressure on big tech to take responsibility and implement change. We had, for example, a case that was being investigated by our data protection authority in Brazil. They were investigating the processing of children's data by TikTok, and it ultimately resulted in TikTok being forced to implement changes that were already in place in the EU to better protect children's data in Brazil. And this was under our data protection laws. We also were able to bring a lot of public attention to the urgent need for better child protection online. We had, for example, a complaint on kid influencers on Instagram doing gambling ads and promoting casinos for other children. And we filed a complaint on that, and it gained a lot of attention from the media. So it's also a way to drive public opinion towards the need for more regulation. And finally, we were able to strengthen the connection between ECA Digital and other existing legal frameworks, looking to make the whole system more coherent. And finally, I know I've gone over my time, but very briefly, communication played a very important role in the approval of ECA Digital in Brazil. Right before the law was approved, a digital influencer called Felca published a video on his YouTube channel where he showed very dark situations of children being exploited online and being adultified by their parents on social media, and the way social media's algorithms were boosting this situation. This video gained a lot of traction. It gathered more than 50 million views in just 2 weeks. And this really, built the momentum that was needed in order to make the approval of ECA Digital possible. So I think what this shows is, first of all, that children's rights has a unifying power that can bring together societies and public opinion in a way that other topics can't. It also shows that communication strategies are very central to advocacy efforts of the nature. And we have other examples, the social dilemma case, the adolescence series case. It can be a very effective tool for advocacy. And finally, I think it's also very important that when we are discussing these cases in public opinion, we always try to steer the conversation toward platform accountability, not, focus on the roles of other actors and families, in order to make sure that the way platform design and their business models are contributing to these harms are always centered. So I'm going a little bit over my time. I'm happy to expand later. You have my content. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing that. We are really appreciated to listening to your points. Now, Upendo, over to you.
Thank you so much. And now the time we've all been waiting for, any questions you have been answered, I'll pass over to Professor Sonia Livingstone, who is the Director of the Digital Futures for Children Center, for the Q&A session and some closing words. Sonia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Upendo, and welcome to everyone. It's lovely to see so many people who have been participants along this journey of first drafting the General Comment 25 and then working with everyone to really make it real in the world. So I have some comments to kind of wind up, but first I really want to hear from everyone and to respect all the different comments and questions that have appeared in the chat. So thank you all for being so vocal, and I'm glad it's making everyone think. We've had some really, I think, interesting and informative and encouraging contributions from our participants today. So I have taken the liberty of picking out one question for each of our speakers, and I'm going to ask them to be very concise so that we can get through all of them. And actually, I'm going to start with Marie-Ève Nadeau. Marie-Ève, Bernard Richard from Canada asked you which are the leading initiatives that you think the youth ambassadors and young people around the world should really lobby their governments for. You gave us some encouraging examples. What are your kind of priorities for banging at the doors of government?
Yes, thank you so much for the question, Sonia. And I've indeed seen this question from a fellow Canadian, although I'm now based in Brussels. But I would say that I understood the question in the chat was about what good looks like. Actually, and indeed, I think it was a little bit this response while we came out with those fundamental principles and how to really implement general comment that has many pages into a policy guidance. But I know definitely Canada will be a country that is lagging a little bit behind. There is a little bit to catch up from the online safety to AI and data protection. So, but that's development that we'll be looking around the world, I would say.
We have lots of participation from Canada, so I don't know. I expect some action there soon. But Maria, thank you. I'm going to turn to Sophie next. And Manikan Khanna from India asked, I think, what is one of the kind of key challenging questions, Sophie, focusing on questions of child protection online. How can we, and what would you say the committee can really do to encourage implementation for child online protection in a context where there is, especially in the global south, where there may be the lack of resources and the lack of infrastructure? What do you see as the way forward there?
Thank you very much, Sonia, and thanks for the question and all the previous speakers. I enjoyed really all the presentations and very useful information. With the Global South, yes, it's very challenging, but I think there is no perfect country. Even the Global North countries, they are very far from being perfect. But I see a lot of challenges also from for the Global South countries. And the only one, of course, they have much less resources, but the very important point is that what we can do as those who care for children, especially, what we can do is just to push advocating. The CRC, of course, with the concluding observations and all the instrument it has, all the mandates, and all other organizations within their own mandates, but also CSOs are very important to keep advocating. But of course, it does not depend then at the end of the day on us. But I have seen on many various occasions to pushing things, to advocating very strongly, it might have a very good success. As what by the way, GC25 has already shown during the last 5 years. And many of you mentioned, and also the presentation of Kim has very, very clearly shown that there are concrete, very good results. And this didn't happen on its own. There is a huge efforts from everyone in order to achieve these examples.
Yeah.
But also the same is for the Global South countries. So what I can say, we just need to move forward and continue with our work. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think there's a lot of commitment here to do exactly that. For Kim Sylvander, a question from Marcus Stahlhofer from the World Health Organization. I think actually Marcus asked you a double question, which I'm going to address to you, Kim, which is firstly, in tracking the impact of General Comment 25, what did you see particularly around marketing and making changes in relation to marketing and advertising to children? And then I think relatedly, you also asked a question about the value of kind of standardized assessment tools to even track the changes and hopefully improvements that we see.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions. So when it comes to marketing, there were examples. I think the ECA Digital in Brazil very much is an example where kind of the issues of marketing were, João can correct me here if I'm wrong, but were quite central in terms of one of the central issues that people were really feeling passionate about. And I think in several contexts in Ireland, I believe as well in Netherlands, and especially, for example, in Indonesia, as well as examples of work being done, for example, in South Africa and other African countries, we do see that marketing is something that people react to. They understand it as something that actually children should not be targeted by marketing. It's definitely not they shouldn't be targeted by marketing which is not child appropriate. And they should also definitely, yes, be protected from all kinds of commercial exploitation, where marketing is, I think, one big part of it. So, and the value of standardized measures. Thank you for that question. I think that's something that is looking ahead, which is a good kind of segue to think about what's ahead. I think that's one of the things that we're thinking about as well. Standardized measures and standardized and also indicators that can be used to really see, okay, well, now we know that General Comment 25 can be impactful. We can see it. I think Brazil is an amazing example of how the consolidation of many different types of actors and the localization of the language of the General Comment 25 can be very impactful and really be implemented into law. But what we do need now is to say, well, we need benchmarks to say, well, how can we see this change being realized in the lives of children? And I think that we don't have yet. So we have these changes in law, regulation, in people's minds, and how organizations are really doing their everyday work kind of on these issues. But yes, I welcome that. And please, let's engage in this conversation, all of us in this room. Thank you.
Thank you. João, I'm going to ask you a question that I don't know the answer to. I'm really curious what you'll say, from Kate Tilichek, also from Canada, who asked about prospects for disruptive technologies and perhaps disruptive business models. I know this is something that Alana does think about. I just wonder if you see some transformative effects from unexpected quarters.
I do, Sonia, and I do think that's what gives me the most hope, to be honest. I think in a lot of ways, the business models that dominate the current digital world landscape are inherently harmful. You know, they are focused mainly on capturing the attention and the personal data of not only children, but all users. And I think that if that's the standard that is currently in place, it's going to be really hard to make sure that those harms are not reproducing and that children are not exposed to several issues online. So I do think that there is a lot of space for us to think of alternatives to these business models that might not be as inherently problematic as the ones we have currently in place are. And I think regulation is an incredibly important tool to drive innovation towards this sort of more respectful business models. But I do think that, you know, it's also very important to foster innovation initiatives beyond regulation in order to make sure that these alternatives are popping up. And I think, you know, an innovation that listens to children, that take their opinions as a center part of what is being put out there, is the way to go if we want to change the landscape towards more respectful innovation and a digital landscape that actually respects children's rights.
Thank you. Fantastic. I'm going to come next to Gina Berg and ask a question which was, I think, crystallized by Hugh Russell in Wales, but I think in many people's minds at the moment, which is about the question of banning children and young people from the digital world. And he asked the subtle question about what the young people thought, not only about the bans, but also about the question of age verification and uses of their data. And that you will have heard a lot about those tricky balancing questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sonia, and to Hugh for the question. Certainly this is, you know, becomes complex terrain, both from a technical and a human rights and child rights perspective. I think when we look at things like age verification, we are aware that there isn't a way to do them without collecting, for example, identifying personal data. And there are different ways to do age verification, but all of it requires identifying or collecting data on people, not only on children, but also on everyone online. And that raises some serious human rights and child rights concerns, particularly vis-a-vis rights to privacy, freedom of expression. And so really the answers are not straightforward, but we really need to, in these cases, be very clear about taking a human rights and child rights based approach and respecting approach to the handling, processing and storage of people and children's personal data. And then what did children say about it? Well, we haven't quite got there to this level of detail in our analysis of the data. But so far, what I have read from children's responses was that children are very aware of the issues about how their data can be collected, used, or misused. They're quite careful in their own capacities, although many don't understand or really know about how they can protect their personal data online. So I think this is a very live debate and question, and children are in many different ways aware of it, and we need to bring them on board in identifying the solutions together with those who are designing the digital platforms and tools that children are using.
Thank you. I just going to offer a few last remarks, and then I think the Global Youth Ambassadors will have a final word. So forgive us if we run just a little bit over, but I just want to take you back to when we started and when Biban Kidron said, you know, what is General Comment 25 about? It's about what good looks like. It's about really recognizing what good looks like for children and young people growing up today in a digital world. And as she reminded us, and as we know, children's rights are human rights. They apply in the digital world. They apply in the world, which is now digital. And we, even in the last 5 years, have lived through a transformation. When we began drafting the general comment, it was rather low on the public agenda. Now we are all a little crazy, I think, because there is so much happening in relation to the digital, and there are so many questions being asked about what is good for children. At the same time, as Sophie Kaladze reminded us, it is not all a positive story, and we are facing some challenges in children's lives, many challenges actually, and we are also facing some backlash against efforts to regulate, efforts to improve, efforts to redesign and to kind of address especially the big tech industry. So it is not plain sailing. In that sense, I'm kind of encouraged by the research reports that we launched as part of today's event. So Kim Sylvander's research tracking the impact of General Comment 25 around the world really showed us how many real changes are occurring. But she also tracked the real obstacles that we are seeing that will be, I think, very much the focus of our next 5 years. And she offered us a theory of change, a way in which we can coordinate and bring together what can look like some very scattered efforts so that we make the most of the efforts and the resources that we have thinking about children's rights. In that sense, it was encouraging. Marie-Ève Nadeau from Five Rights reminded us of the good practices, best practices even that are emerging in different parts of the world. And I think sharing those and making those more visible is really, again, a priority. Zhao called on us to, I think, get out of our box of children's rights and really build wider bridges. I think that has to be essential now. So I commend his point to build bridges with the human rights organizations that are also looking for what good looks like in a digital world, build bridges with the digital governance organizations, with the technical community. There are lots of different facets and bodies of expertise that are pushing in the right direction. We want to make that sure that children's voices are heard in that. And on that note, I'm delighted that the Global Youth Ambassadors have really hosted today's event. And I'm delighted that we had a chance to hear from Gina Berg, who has been doing, really initiated a global consultation with children, something many people think cannot be done, but that really has brought children's voices from many parts of the world into this discussion. And as we heard from her, children are often the canaries in the coal mine. They kind of know first what the risks are. They also tell us first why some of the solutions adults propose are not going to work, but they also give us a very strong sense of what the benefits, what the promise can be if we get it right. So I'm delighted to have heard from everyone, to be part of this, to see so many friends, and I add my celebrations and congratulations to General Comment 25 on its 5th birthday. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for everyone for joining us today, the speakers, the moderators, everyone, for your continued support for children's rights in the digital environment. Before I say anything more, let's just give a round of applause to everyone that's been here. Just say thank you so much. The speakers, let's give a round of applause to the speakers, the moderators, EXA, everyone. We have done an amazing job. And finally, I hope that General Comment 25 will be able to gain more traction and more children will be able to understand their digital rights and how they can move forward. And any issues that are still prevalent can be dealt with in the future. And happy anniversary to General Comment 25. Happy 5th anniversary to everyone here. That is all I'll say.
Last but not least, I want to thank every single one of you for this great meeting. And I want to say to every single member of this unique organization a huge happy birthday.